This is part 3 of a 3-part seminar about advanced techniques in bass fishing, specifically fishing the stick bait. John Blank is a Bass Pro angler and one of my associate guides. John gave the seminar at Cabela's in Tulalip, Washington, and it's packed with great information about fishing stick baits a variety of ways. Here in part 3, John will wrap up this seminar talking about fishing the stick bait Texas rig style and using the drop shot technique.
And then lift and fall. So you get all the way down to the bottom. I take it and I do a little wrist pump, bump, 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 and then let it fall back down again, and I work that all the way back to the boat. But this will definitely extend the life of your lure there on the Wacky style. You want to go weedless. Here's two examples. This comes around and hooks on the barb. So it looks like that. I believe that's a Gamakatsu hook in the picture. But most of my fishing, when I'm throwing mine, I do just fine having the exposed hook. And then, like I said, wrist pumps that as it falls. Give it a little action as it flutters down, and you're going to find your catch rates will go up fishing it in that fashion. So fishing uses, docks, rocks and rocky points, just like the other one. Works really well for smallmouth. Now you can put a nail weight in it to get it down a little faster. Will certainly work. If you're fishing it around trees and stumps, that's when I use the weedless, so I don't get caught up as much going down through there. And then weed lines. Retrieve, just like the other one, you're going to cast it out. Spinning rod works well. Close the bail. Let it sink down, and as it goes, just give it a little pulse every so often, all the way down to the bottom. Then I let it sit there for a second. And then I let it sit there for a second. And I know as bass fishermen, we like to be power fishermen. We like to throw spinner baits, and we like to throw crankbaits, and we like to go fast down the bank. And I'm Kevin Van Dam, and I'm just going to go through and slow down. When you fish this one, it's a great time to have lunch. My wife does really well because she likes fishing out of the back of the boat, and she just throws it out there while she's reading a book or enjoying the sun. And, oh, I got a fish, and I'm power fishing going nuts. So slow down when you fish this. Works really well. Fish it on semi-slack line. Watch for any unique movements. Set the hook hard. And then skip casting. If you haven't skip casted before, get your spinning rod out. Grab the Wacky style. You're definitely going to want an O-ring on it. Yes, sir.
How far can you expect people to cast something with that little bit of weight on it?
These things are rocket ships. Okay,
Long way.
I can cast, no doubt, this on my bait casting reel weightless, probably 50 yards or better. Yeah. And have you ever felt one? Feel free. But that weight, and they're aerodynamically wicked when it comes to casting. So yeah, they cast really well. And even on those on a spinning rod, I can probably get 40 yards out of it with my spinning gear, unless I'm casting into the wind. But when you skip cast, you're going to come down sidearm, and you're going to put a lot of pressure on that when you do the initial cast. If you have too stiff of a rod, okay, if I'm using heavy, I'm not going to get that whipping action up here that's going to launch it. And I want to use the rod to load the rod, and then I come forward, and it's just like a kid when you go and skip rocks. Cast it hard at that front of the target and put some velocity on it. And what you're going to find is, guess what? You just now ended up 5 or 7 feet back in behind the dock, and you're getting to places where people don't flip to, and you're going to get better success. Same with overhangs on trees. It's like, how am I ever going to go this way and cast into it? Skip cast it. Come on the side, get down low, parallel to the water, and launch it in that location. So great technique. That's probably If I'm smallmouth fishing, this is my number one go-to. If I'm largemouth fishing, Wacky rig's probably the second, and I fish largemouth more weightless the other way. Your next bet, if I'm targeting fish. Okay, so I'm fishing late spring, early summer. Fish are on their beds. I want to throw and I want to target to a spot, or I want to fish a brush pile and I want to get this worm into there. That's when I'm going to Texas rig it. So I do everything the same as I do right here, except for now I have a bullet weight that slides up and down my line. Now if I'm really going into heavy cover, I take a peg, a toothpick, and jam it in the hole where my line goes through so that weight doesn't slide. So now it's coming down through all the cover in one action. So that's the Texas rig. I usually throw that on a 3/16 to a 1/4 ounce bullet weight to get in there. Like I said, I peg the weight or use a screw-in weight like you see up here. So it's all in one when you're fishing heavier cover. And when I go into that heavier cover, I'm going up 15, 17 pound test. I'm definitely not going to throw an 8 or 10 pound test in that cover because my chances of getting that fish out of there is going to be a lot more difficult. And then if you have the opportunity to have multiple rods on your boat, as I know if you're an avid bass fisherman, you're probably like me, you can line the whole deck of your boat and around you with rods. It's just an addiction for us. Always have a heavier setup for it to go in there. And again, you're looking at your hook, 2/0 to 5/0, depending on how big of a Cinco or stick bait you're using. And then grade, like I said, if you're bed fishing, throwing this on a bed, that bass is going to get mad if that's sitting there. Sooner or later, it's going to pop it up. When I'm bed fishing, that's when I like to give it a little different action so I can just twitch it a little bit and get more motion out of that worm to agitate that bass. If you're just at a beginner level, you know, it might be easier if you're throwing this on a bed to use a color that's easier seen so you can see how the fish reacts to it. Start off with white. I know I even do it if it's a deep bed, just so I can see location, and then I see how the fish reacts and adjust colors as necessary. And sometimes I got 10 Plano boxes out around the boat because the fish won't bite anything, but I'm trying. You know, we've all been there with that. But it does work well for bed fishing. And then modify the worm, like I said, to give it a different look. And it's simply taking your scissors, cutting the back of the worm up. It gives a different fall. You can make one cut and then a cross cut to get 4 tentacles or cut each individual. You'll be surprised at what it does to the action. And what I end up doing when I fish these is I save a lot of my ones that get beat up that I've used, I've caught a couple fish with. I do a couple things. Number one, these aren't cheap. We all know how much a bag of Cincos costs. I take a paper clip, I heat it up on a candle, and I'll go where my hook was, where it's all scored up. I run that paper clip in there, heat the plastic up again, pull it out, and pinch it. What it does is it seals it and makes it like a new worm again. Also, what I do, and I'm getting ready to talk about it, is I'll save them and I'll make drop shot rigs out of them. Yeah, part of the worm might not be good, but I'm going to take a 5-inch worm and I'm going to bring it down to a 3-inch worm. And then I'm going to use it on drop shot and I'm going to split the tail on it. And now I got a bait that I can use all over again that'll work just fine. So I know if you're an avid fisherman like me, I got a bucket of plastics at the end of every season that I go through and I just start playing around with to see what works and what the fish like. And doesn't cost me anything. And it's a great recovery program for your Cincos. So Texas rig, you're looking at your location. Rocky points where you're targeting an area works really well. Weed lines as well, going down through. Stumps, limbs, and brush piles is probably one of my biggest uses when I'm Texas rigging. And then bed fishing as well. Retrieve, you're going to cast to a targeted location. And again, where I said that's where you might want a bait cast set up. So you cast to your location, it's sitting there, it's down in there. Now I'm going to use this and I'm going to do little motions and I'm going to work that worm in and through the cover, bounce it off the brush. The more stuff I can come in contact with that worm, not only on the fall, but the retrieve, the more chance you're going to get a strike. Because again, think of how bass react. They're a predatory animal and we want to trigger that bite instinct. So a quick little jerk, boom, let it set, kind of like a wounded bait fish or something like that. That comes into play big time there. Lift and pause, drag and pop, the bait on the bottom. Most strikes, they're going to come on the fall. Drop shot, vertical presentation. So when you look at a drop shot, you have a different kind of hook. It's a VMC. It's got a dual swivel. And I like to, so I tie going up and I tie going down to the weight. And now that worm comes off of here and I can go vertical right on the bottom. I'm generally using my spinning rod at that point and I'm targeting bass that I see on my fish finder. Or you can cast that out to a bed and get fish there. Great for largemouth and smallmouth. Use a 3 or 4 inch stick bait, and that's where when I talk to the recovery program, so saying you're saving your big worms, maybe the front of your worm has been beat up. Okay, and now I use this on a drop shot hook. That looks like this. Here's a VMC, and I love VMCs because it's got a barrel swivel that's been modified to keep you from getting line twists. Works really well. Feed it through, and now I'm going to fish this on a vertical presentation dancing around. So it's definitely a versatile technique for that. A 1 to 1/0 drop shot hook is ideal. And then there's times when I get into smallmouth and they're very aggressive. I'll have this one going down to my weight, generally 6 to 8 inches. I'll come up another 10 inches and guess what? I get greedy. I put another hook and another bait there and I'll double up. And there'll be times where you'll get too smally on the same one because they're competing over the bait fish. So don't be afraid to try that. And generally 1/4 ounce is probably the size of drop shot weight that you use that's most common. If I'm really deep, there's current, I'm going to up that weight, but generally 1/4 ounce so I can keep contact with the bottom. Use the tip of my rod when I spin fish and I'll just kind of shake it a little bit and entice those fish to bite. Fishing locations, maybe you go from 40 feet up to 20 and you're picking up fish on that flat. That's where that vertical presentation and working those fish is really good. Beds, I know a lot of people will throw a drop shot on a bed. It gives them a lot of opportunity to work that worm around. Works really well with the Cinco too because your weight's off the bed, but that worm is laying towards you on the bed and you can agitate that fish and get it to bite there as well. Docks and pilings. If you're fishing the Columbia River, you got the channel markers. You're fishing up at Lake Whatcom, there's lots of sunken pilings. Get that thing right down as close to the pilings as you can get and jig it around, whether it's with a stick style bait like this or a robo worm or a grub. It's very, very versatile on drop shot. You want to use your electronics. That's going to be your best success. Find the fish and go after the quantities there. And then your retrieve is cast to the targeted location and shake, keeping weight in contact with the bottom. And it's your wrist action that's going to get those fish to bite. And then when you catch them on drop shot, it's a different set the hook, okay? Because generally you've already pinned that fish when it bit it, it's going right through the roof of the mouth. So it's simply lift and reel and it'll set itself on its own. You don't need to reef on that fish. It's a direct up and you'll have good success. So that kind of wraps up my presentation today. I would like to thank my sponsors, Peregrine Lodge. They're up out of Queen Charlotte Island, a great partner with me. They help fund me as I go around the tournament trail, gives me an opportunity. If you're ever looking for a spot for a 5-star resort world-class salmon fishing experience, I do have some back at my table, some brochures, Peregrine Lodge.
Well, that wraps it up for this 3-part seminar about using the stick bait for bass fishing. I hope these advanced techniques is helpful for you and get you on the water and get you into bass fishing. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and keep up on all of our videos. Thanks for watching.